Welcome back, Sebastian here. So today I'm going to be reviewing Alpine's 2024 F1 season. Now for Alpine, not a great season, I think, in many respects, especially given, I think, expectations going into the season and comparing to, some of their recent results. You only have to look back 2 years to 2022, where they were basically locked in a very, very close battle for fourth in the Constructors' Championship with McLaren. And of course, it feels like over the past 2 years, the paths of those two teams have completely diverged and gone in completely different directions. This year, of course, McLaren won the Constructors' Championship, whereas Alpine, for much of the season, looked like they were on pace to finish ninth in the Constructors. A very, very fortuitous Brazilian Grand Prix definitely helps and makes sure that they end up a little bit later in the series than I think they otherwise would have. But let's get right to business. So starting with the driver analysis and looking at their driver head-to-head. So of course, there are two drivers this year, Pierre Gasly, Esteban Ocon. They raced together for 23 of the 24 races. Of course, Ocon did not race in Abu Dhabi. So for some of these stats, Gasly's stats from Abu Dhabi will not be included, just so that you know that. So first starting out with qualifying, these two drivers were very, very closely matched in qualifying. In fact, the closest two drivers on the grid this past season. So for qualifying head-to-head, Ocon had the edge 12 to 11 there. And of course, because he had the edge there, he also led the median qualifying gap 4 thousandths of a second. So basically almost nothing between them over the course of the season. And it was very interesting. Basically the first 10 races or so, Ocon had a big advantage over Gasly in qualifying, but Gasly really clawed back that deficit and basically meant that by the end of the season, it was basically almost even going in. And if Ocon had raced in Abu Dhabi, I think Gasly probably out-qualified him, and again, changes the perspective a little bit, but again, can't really be helped in this situation. When you look at average starting position and finishing position for both drivers, for Gasly, he did have a little bit better numbers here, 13.32 compared to Ocon's 14.39. So despite the fact that Ocon out-qualified him, Gasly did have the better average starting position, which suggests that when Gasly out-qualified Ocon, it was generally by a bit of a bigger margin. Now, when you look at average finishing position, Gasly 11.68, Ocon 13.24. So Gasly making up a couple more, like almost a whole position more than Ocon over the course of a race distance. Now, in terms of championship ranking, for Gasly, he finished 10th in the championship, and for Ocon, he finished 14th. And again, for both of them, the Brazil podiums for the pair of them definitely put them a couple, 3 to 4 places higher than I think they would have been without those results. But again, when you look at race head-to-head, Ocon has the advantage there in races where both drivers finished 9 to 8. But when you look at points, Gasly has the advantage 36 to 23. And it really feels like, again, very similar to the qualifying stats where Ocon was generally the better driver for the first half of the season, I think for sure. But it's just that the car, unfortunately, was not very good and it wasn't really capable of scoring points. Second half of the season, car got much better, was more capable of scoring points, and the gap basically went completely the other way, where Gasly was the one who really benefited. So I think in that respect, the points gap between the pair of them, I think, is skewed a little bit by the fact that when Gasly was beating Ocon, the car was much better, and again, that's going to extenuate the points gap between them. When you look at points above expected between the two of them, it's a bit of an interesting story. So looking at the expected points model, for Gasly, his was 10.75 points above expected, which comes out at 137%, which is very, very good. One of the best numbers in the midfield. When you look at Ocon, though, interestingly, it wasn't that high. It was 0.48 above expected, so 102%. So still pretty good. But despite the fact that he had that podium at Brazil, he's barely over 100%. So again, curious situation there. Of course, with Brazil, Ocon started 4th, I believe, in that Grand Prix. Gasly only started 13th. So again, that's going to contribute to a bit of a difference there in the expected result. But again, it does suggest that for whatever reason, Gasly was generally getting the most out of his car when he was based on their starting positions. Now, when you look at average power ranking across the season, I did feel like actually, despite the fact that all these stats I've kind of told you suggested that Ocon generally looked better, I actually, according to my power rankings across the full season, I thought Gasly was the better driver. An average score of 11.5, which ranked 11th. Ocon was very close behind, 12.61, which ranked 13th. So I thought both drivers were okay, and they were definitely not the problem for Alpine this year. Now, comparing 2024 to 2023, again, it's almost the complete opposite of last year. Last year, there was almost nothing between them in the races. You can see the blue line for 2023 is basically at 0. But again, it's gone up to about 1.5 in Gasly's favor for 2024. And again, skewed a little bit by Gasly's great results in the second half of the season. But when you look at the qualifying gap, it's gone the other way. So for 2023, qualifying gap between them was about a tenth of a second in Gasly's favor. But this year, it's basically gone to almost dead even between the two of them. So interesting that, each of their 2 years as teammates, they have 1 year where they're basically dead even in the race, and then another where they're dead even in qualifying, and then another where it's basically a bit in Gasly's favor. So I think on the balance of it, I do think Gasly kind of showed over these past 2 years that he's the slightly better driver of the two. But again, I think they're very, very closely matched. And again, one of the more tightly contested teammate head-to-heads of the last, 5 to 6 years, I would say. Now, taking a look at Alpine, again, some of these stats are going to be pretty ugly, and definitely, suggesting that they're not on the right trajectory. But again, I think the last part of the season was promising, and we'll get into that in a bit. But 65 points total for the team, 6 in the Constructors' Championship. And again, when you look at their qualifying pace and their race pace, qualifying pace, average pole gap 1.114 seconds, which ranked 8th. And their average minimum finishing position, which again I like to use for races, 9.88, which ranked 7th of the 10 teams. So the fact that they ranked 8th in quality pace, 7th in race pace, and yet they still ended up 6th in the constructors is a bit of a surprise. And again, like we all know, that result in Brazil played a massive role in them ending up in 6th. So again, when people look at the constructors tables in years to come, and they see Alpine in 6th, they'll say, oh, not too much different from 2023, despite the fact that I think the reality is that they were quite a bit worse in 2023, and they got quite lucky with that result. Not saying that the result in Brazil was not fully deserved. Of course it was. But it's just obviously with those circumstances, they would never have been able to get a 2-3 in dry conditions, realistically speaking, right? Now, when you look at qualifying gap through the season, they've made very, very good progress over 1 lap. And again, that is in a way good news for next year, because it means that the upgrades that they brought to the car were working, and it means that they kind of understand what they need to do to make the car better. So you can see at the start of the year, they were basically 1.5 seconds off pole, slowest car in qualifying basically up until Miami or so. And then they basically improved, and they actually were pretty good up until the halfway mark of the season. They were pretty close with the Haas, the RB, just under about 0.8 off of pole. And then they kind of started to trend backwards. And again, some of these tracks were power circuits, so again, definitely doesn't help with the Alpine engine in the car. And so that gap went pretty close back to about 1.5 seconds. But last quarter of the season or so, things were very, very good. And again, they've progressed to a point where towards the end of the season, they were basically almost a half a second off pole, which is very, very good. And it means, I think, if they have a very, very good car development over the winter, and again, with Pierre Gasly driving the car next year, I don't think they're going to be challenging the top 4 teams regularly. But, in a best case scenario for Alpine, I think in 2025, they could be the team that's kind of best of the rest, and they could have a clear gap to some of the teams behind them. But again, I think Jack Doohan's performance is going to influence that result. If he can have a very, very strong rookie season, then I think that'll help. If he struggles, a bit similar to Tsunoda in 2021, it may open the door for a team that's a little bit slower than them to leapfrog them in the Constructors' championship. Now, when you look at the Alpine's results from quarter to quarter, you again can kind of see where the results from Brazil kind of show up. When you look at points, first 3 quarters, they were basically, scoring a handful of points at best each quarter. And then the final quarter of the season, they get over 50 points. So massive difference there. When you look at average finishing position, though, you can see that they did again improve that final quarter as well. So there wasn't just a one-off in Brazil. Gasly had a very good pace through most of the races in the final quarter of the season, and again qualified P3 in Vegas before his engine went kaboom. So again, there was quite a bit of good pace in that Alpine car that final quarter. But the average finishing position, you can see first quarter they were about 14th, and then second quarter again it improved to about 11th, and then went back to 14th for the third quarter. For the final quarter, it basically improved to about somewhere between like 9 and 10th. So again, good improvement there, and it'll be interesting to see how that development continues for 2025. When you look at the team the last 5 years, it's unfortunately a bit of a downward trend, and again the last 6 races or last quarter of the season kind of masks how bad they were for the first 3 quarters of the season. But you can see for both qualifying pace and for race pace, this is average minimum finishing position. So again, a little bit of a different stat compared to just the straight average. But you can basically see for both of the 2 numbers since 2020, they've basically been going in a upward line, which basically means they're getting slower and slower every single year. Again, with a slight difference in 2022, where there was a bit of an improvement that first year of the new regulations. So again, for Alpine, it'll be really important for them for the long-term project. Of course, they're dropping their engine, their works engine, team. At the end of 2025, they're going to become a Mercedes customer for the new regulations, which I think it will limit how bad they can do in 2026. Just because obviously, if you make your own engine and it's absolutely terrible, go look at Maconda 2015. It can go very, very wrong. But assuming Mercedes should have a pretty good engine for 2026, it does limit a little bit how bad things can go. But again, on the other side of that, it does kind of limit your ceiling as well. All of that being said, Mercedes did win, or McLaren did win the Constructors' Championship this year as a Mercedes customer. So McLaren have just shown that, you can win as an engine customer in Formula One. It's taken what are we on? Year 10 almost of this set of engine regulations. So again, maybe not super sustainable in the long run, but again, nonetheless, it'll be interesting to see how Alpine do in 2025. Of course, new driver coming in Jack Doohan to partner with Pierre Gasly. So again, I think their driver lineup will be okay. There's going to be a lot of rookies next year, so there's going to be quite a few teams who are in a similar situation to them. Basically, one experienced driver, one rookie. So again, that kind of handicap of having a less experienced driver, I think, won't be as severe just because there's going to be so many of them next year. But there you go. There's my review of Alpine's 2024 F1 season. Not a great season again, but again, obviously the high was that Brazil podium. There's that second and third. And again, they were able to get 6 in the constructors as a result of that. But anyway, thank you so much for watching, and goodbye.